I am delighted to host this on behalf of the Citizens, their new Substack, Citizens Reunited, to have here. I can't think of two more amazing thinkers around what is one of the absolutely most important issues of our age. And it's particularly this place where technology meets culture. And so we have Kyle Chayka here with us, who is, I'm going to get you to introduce yourself. It's much better. And uh, and I'll just get along. But I guess maybe if you can say a little bit about who you are when you come in. But Kyle, can you just kick us off with what I'd like to kick off with you? Amazing writer, writes for the New Yorker, two books, all sorts of things. But the piece I think which really, when I was like, oh, that's this guy, I think was this piece you wrote a couple of years ago. Well, it was an extract from the book Filter World. And it was about this thing which you're so good at sort of like identifying things that we've all noticed, but we haven't yet put into words. And it was this thing about how all coffee shops now look exactly the same, whether you're in Brooklyn or if you're in Hackney or if you're in Melbourne. What we noticed that we've all seen it, but tell us how this happened, Carl.
Yeah, that's I wrote this essay actually in 2016. So that's now how many years ago? Like 9 years ago or whatever. But
I
right now I'm a writer for the New Yorker magazine, and I write a column about internet stuff. But at that point, I was just traveling a lot as a journalist, and I noticed this phenomenon of like all of these cafes having the same interior design style. So you'd have like the subway tiles on the walls and the ceramic vessels with latte art cappuccinos and the avocado toast and the hanging pendant lamps and everything. Um, and my theory became that kind of globalization, this like globalization of taste was happening. And the primary vector was Instagram. It was like the new era of digital platforms that were connecting us all to each other. Um, and thus like making us all follow the same things online. And really what drove all of our attention, like from 2015 onwards, were algorithmic recommendations. So like the recommendations you get through your feeds, the TikTok for you streams, I think all of that is really homogenizing our tastes and making us consume similar things to each other.
whilst we think we're being wildly original because we're such cool hipsters, cool. And so the amazing thing, Carl, is that it is this obviously, if this was a corporate chain, that's what it would all look like. And yet, so we're voluntarily submitting ourselves to a sort of corporatization, a corporatized culture where we think we're being kind of hip and original. Is that what's going on? Just talk me through.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I mean, like a Starbucks is all the same because the corporation imposes that style from the top down, and like that makes sense to us. That's like the McDonald's version of globalization. But I think this is like a bottom up kind of globalization where it's not the corporation, it's like the barista in Tokyo is following the barista in Melbourne, who's following the barista in Williamsburg. And then suddenly, because they can all follow each other in real time, their own tastes and styles are gravitating toward each other's. So it has this promise of authenticity and personalization and like self-expression, but actually your self-expression is a lot like, millions of other people's self-expression, and your cool cafe is a lot like every other cool cafe.
Then you could argue it was just like, well, somebody made a really cool cafe, and the rest of us eventually still thought that's how it cottoned on. Just talk through the bits which is in there, which is the bit that the Facebook of it, which is that algorithm. It's not some natural phenomenon, is it? It's been built by engineers. Like, what is it about that algorithm that optimized for subway tiles and, hanging plants or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, it's like you say, like someone came up with a good idea. And like that's great. We want good ideas and cool stuff in culture. I think the kind of vicious cycle is that once something gets cool in this like internet era, everyone can copy it really, really quickly. So it's like something goes from obscurity to omnipresence in the matter of like days or weeks now, if not like one day in the case of some memes. And I think that's just like it's it's by design of these platforms too, because the platforms are prioritizing just whatever gets engagement on that platform. So, the highest goal of Instagram is not to create great culture, it's to get a lot of people to hit the like button and keep paying attention to their feeds so that they can be targeted with advertising. So I think like ultimately my theory is that these digital platforms have not been created with the goal of making good culture. And we've seen the effects of that at this point.
So, Yancey, do you have subway tiles in your
in my coffee shop I go to.
Actually,
It's
there are.
probably the original Subway tiles, though. Just the first.
There you go. Yes. So Yancey, can you explain who you are and what you do, Yancey? And I'll be interested in what your answer to this question is.
Yeah, I'm a manifestation of the universe that has taken the form of a white dude with glasses and one dimple, and I obsess about creative forms and understanding myself. And in understanding myself, I think understanding things about all of us. And I'm endlessly curious and have been fortunate to spend my life digging into just things that are fascinating to me. Initially, music as a music journalist, starting a tiny record label, then be starting Kickstarter with two friends and learning a whole different set of skills and continuing like every day picking up a new thing I've never done before, I feel.
I love it. So this is just like endless curiosity leads you to do sort of amazing stuff. Yancey, can you just describe and explain? So Kickstarter, you really were you invented crowdfunding basically.
Yeah, I mean Perry Chen, my co-founder, is his original idea, but yeah, that was in 2001. He envisioned sort of a collective decision-making structure by which people could decide whether or not something would happen. And we spent years trying to explain that idea to people in conversation, which is like max pain. You're just watching people's eyes glaze over in real time. And then the second we finally, after years of struggle, got the website live, like everyone we know is like, hey, this is awesome. Why didn't you tell me? And it's like, well, some concepts are just better suited than others, to be understood. But for us, for me, it came from being a creative person who made a lot of I've like never belonged to anything. I'm from a farm in the middle of nowhere. So I've always had to self-legitimize and make my own things. And really came from like, yeah, all of us who are blocked by the powers that be that have no shot of getting whatever prize, like let us do it for ourselves. And really, I think a lot of the internet in the past 15 years has been built around the fact that there are more of us amateurs in quote marks, than there are the previous professional class. And, initially being indie on the internet and being self-published was low status. And now it's at equal status, and in some cases, even higher status. And that happened through raw numbers and this, slowly sort of overtaking this. Um, yeah, there's a great joke. There's this movie called The Other Guys with Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell, and there's a scene at the beginning where a reporter is like from the New York Times blog edition asks a question, and then it's like TMZ print edition asks a question or something like that. But it's like, yeah, the change in culture and media, just means there's more of us creating, putting ideas out than ever before, and yeah.
Can I ask something?
Yeah, go for it. Carl.
I really want to know, like, I love that idea of self-legitimizing, and I wonder, like, where does legitimacy come from now? Like, in this kind of post-crowdsource, like, anyone can publish era, like, what is legitimacy and how do we come by it?
Legitimacy is I think it's a real part of the newest sphere. I think it's a real thing. that accrues through collective belief, but it's a specific type of collective belief. True legitimacy is something that is like has a slow compounding rate. I had this experience. One of the projects I've made is the Creative Independent, which is a daily essay or interview with an artist about what they do, just one a day. And from the beginning, amazing people spoke to us. But I swear for the first year, it felt like nobody cared. And even internally at Kickstarter, where we launched this from, I got so much pushback on this. But after like doing it exactly for a year, it was like the world came out and was like, you know what I love? What these people are doing, and I'm like, where have you been the past year? As I'm like, was this a bad idea or not? But I think that is where the universe is just. And so there's a lot of legitimacy that's about, do you show up? Do you show up each day? Do you earn that in a way that's real? But I think we legitimize each other. I don't think there's a top anymore. I don't look up at all for legitimacy. I look to peers and I look to audiences, but definitely not the top.
That's so interesting. Kyle, can I just say, I've had some feedback, which is that your headphones are a bit funky.
Yeah.
Anyway, just don't worry about it much, but it's audience, you're speaking directly to them. Yancey, can I ask you about this though? So the whole thing about Kickstarter is, and I'm sure there's some amazing stats out there, that facilitates and enables just a huge amount of cultural production by artists and musicians and just all sorts of crazy, right? And as you said, that was really the democratization promise of the internet that we were promised, right? That's what we were promised. This kind of like amazing collaborative, the way it would bring people together, we would build amazing things. However, some might say that there is the little problems which we encountered along the way. One of them is this total cacophony of noise out there. So, which also speaks to the question, Carl, you were asking about how we legitimize. How do we even know to like where to find stuff to which is legitimate? Like, can we just talk about that, the chaos of this current moment?
Should we all just look at our feeds right now and just start scrolling? Or what do we? I'm in it all the time. What do you want to know?
I feel like where to find stuff. Is this better audio?
Yeah, that's great.
I can't tell. Where to find stuff is like the principal problem now. And like, I think you could have an answer, 6 or 8 years ago when there was more of these like centralized feeds and the culture around that. But I think now it's much more difficult. Like, as is figuring out legitimacy and like where to find it and how to cultivate it. I don't know. Like, I have gone back to like blogs and blog rolls and like people's once a month recommendation newsletters and just like the most niche lo-fi stuff on the internet again.
Well, and what about you, Jens? I mean, you've both actually written about, haven't you, removing yourself from the noise and the chaos, and how that is both is and isn't the answer, maybe. I mean, Yancey, do you want to tell us about the dark forest?
Well, I mean, there's so many ways to think about this of like, I probably learn the most if I'm just like looking internally and trying to be really honest with myself for like an hour. Probably I learn as much about the world that way as probably more than if I look at a feed. I think there's a question of what we allow to be our source of meaning or entertainment. And I have the great privilege of living in New York. So walking in New York City is a lot of how I learn and think and participate. I read random old books a lot, just finding wisdom. Honestly, I feel like that is a better way to understand now than almost anything. But I think it's, when you try to have all the information, I think it's hard to be alive fully at the same time. And I think that's like, there's a way of, I don't know. There's a way of really being deeply alive within yourself and to the world around you that comes from some level of like dialing a right size for you. But like, there's a great record store I love in Vancouver that has this excellent newsletter on Fridays that is like a highlight of my week. Like when it comes out, I'm like, I'm looking through every single thing in that newsletter. Like that is a top 5 internet moment for me. no one else is going to care, audiopile.ca if you're curious. But yeah, that's like, I don't know. I think that's the way.
So it's that, but then it's that idea of the tastemaker almost, isn't it? Is that, and that is, I mean, so I've been at this conference. It's this sort of very glammy conference on journalism this week, which is held in London by Tina Brown, who the queen of legacy media. It's a celebration. Her husband Harry Evans, one of the greatest editors of all time, amazing investigative journalist. And it's the third year they've had it, and they have these really big beasts of the legacy media there. Jeffrey Goldberg from the Atlantic, amazing editor, the executive editor of the New York Times. But this year, for the first year, actually, they did actually have some of the sort of more disruptive voices and coming from, because Queen Tina has joined Substack. And it's a really big moment for them, because that's going to the question of legitimacy. Tina is the legitimizer of old school, proper the golden age of magazines, like Tina participated in. So to having her coming over. So I just wondered, so Kyle, can you tell me what you make of, because it's interesting, right? Kyle has a great newsletter called, is it Fun, Kyle?
Sorry, it's called One Thing.
One Thing. Actually, I signed up to this and I hadn't quite anyway, it popped into my inbox this morning and I read it and I thought, that is so spot on. I immediately forwarded it to a load of people, and Kyle was taking the piss out of exactly what we're doing here. And it's really interesting, which is, so he's like, oh God, it's like the entire news ecosystem has now become these faces popping up on Substack Live or wherever you are, and they're yakking to each other, and it's just noise. And I have to say that was my whole response. So this is, I resisted Substack Live until we did our first little pilot this week, and we're doing this first one on this. So the Citizens, FYI, people who've come here from elsewhere, the Citizens is a non-profit which was set up in 2020 and really around experimenting with different ways of trying to hold tech companies to account, how to build community around people who care about this stuff. Anyway, Kyle, can you, and they weren't on Substack, right? Because they chose the ethical newsletter host ghost quite properly where to be. But then I have this thing is, as a journalist, I'm like, you've just got to be where people are. And this is where the audience is right now. And so I was like, listen, you might as well come over. And so anyhow, this has been a bit of an experiment. But Kyle, can you tell me about what you wrote in your newsletter this morning and what you make right?
Yeah, I mean, I think lately it does feel like everyone is like live streaming and doing podcasts and going on every new platform at once. And it does feel like cacophonous in a way, because you don't know where to pay attention. You can get it like filtered through Substack, but maybe you want more, maybe you want different stuff. And I think what has happened is, like, in the midst of all that noise and confusion, we've gone back to like the level of the individual. So we want to see a face and a voice, maybe in real time, like telling us what to look at and then what things to think about and where to point our attention. So yeah, I mean, things like this, like Substack Live or Tina Brown's newsletter, or even like live events like that, the Truth Tellers Summit, I think it was called. Those are ways to like rebuild trust and connection in this moment where like a lot of that has been lost online, and we're trying to like knit things back together. And I think, I mean, things like the small scale audio newsletter or going to a store or like these one-to-one actions, that seems to me to be where it's at right now, like small scale, individually meaningful stuff.
It is that, but then is there, like, one of the reasons why I kind of resisted it and didn't want to do it for a long time is like, A, nobody needs to see this, and B, also just has a kind of like, you can't, like, it just feels egotistical. Like, that's the, you know what I mean? Is that, like, the point is that I suspect Carl probably the same. Like, I wanted to be a writer because you are not, like, you're not out front, you're at the keyboard. That was part of the whole sort of joy of it.
Yeah. There's this like social pressure and like economic pressure in a way to turn yourself into a multimedia character, I think. And that's like a real problem that we're facing. Like I'm a writer. Like I prefer to be sitting there with my words and like writing a book or whatever. But I do think right now, like people are really connecting with audio and video and like conversations. Like I'm not quite sure why, like we published a newsletter on this, but conversation seems to be really important right now. Like people talking to each other and like expressing different viewpoints, like building a more coherent worldview together. And maybe that happens best through these kinds of formats.
What? So tell me. So Yancey, you're so good at you're so good at seeing into the future, and I love the fact that your way of seeing into the future, it feels to me, is like looking into the past. Is that so? What's coming next? What's in the chaos of the moment where we are on all levels, the political chaos, the information chaos, the democratic chaos, like what and how is how or maybe how is culture going to help us out of this, and how do we build a better culture which is going to sort of help lead us there, I suppose.
Carole, Carole, how dare you dare lay this at me? Yeah. So, I mean, we all see through our lens. We all see partial truth. None of us sees whole truth. So, from my lens, from my part of the oneness, I look into the void. And we're now a quarter of the way through this century. And if I think about what are the biggest stories or shifts or evolutions of the century, to me, a top 5 one is the growth of creative culture. In my lifetime, I've seen creative culture go from like the band room and the basement and like never in the newspaper to now central topic of global conversation, just like economics, politics, sports. Like culture has moved so far up in the importance and the hierarchy of like how society is organized. And a job like a creator did not exist 15 years ago. It is the most desired profession for someone under the age of 16. Unlike an astronaut or a cowboy, past most desired professions, everyone can be a creator. It's not a scarce thing. And if you look at like raw amount of creative output, amount of people consuming creative output, all of those things, it's a chart that just goes straight up. And so this is not the peak. This is not the end. This is the beginning. And right now we're operating within an immature system that is built around individual mode. If you think of the internet as like, I think we're in a pre-Wealth of Nations time.
Oh,
Of like, we're just a bunch of peddlers going around.
you explain that.
Yeah. Well, just like before the introduction of capitalism, the idea was everyone did their own work and made their own money from their own wares. But capitalism introduced the idea that you could combine different skills and produce more collective wealth, and that collective wealth can make more collective wealth. But that is not something for creative people, especially. There's not a way to produce or access collective wealth. It's all individual. So these are things that I believe can and will change, are changing. Mm-hmm. And one of the spaces I see evidence of that is in the dark forest idea, which I've written about in the past. But first observing for myself why I felt wary to be real in public, as I always had been on the internet before. I've been a very online person since like 2000. So I've always been comfortable with that. But I stopped, and I was trying to self-examine why that is. And rather than just hold myself accountable, I blamed everything else, as you should as a writer. So it's all of that. But what I've come to see is that all of my most interesting things happening right now are like private conspiracies and group chats with fellow creative people and friends. I'm in a good, dozen conspiracies right now. All excellent, all super fun. All will launch things on main at some point or another. Some may not, but that is like rewarding and fun. And we're creating outcomes together. And like, that's what the White House is doing to organize bombings. Like, this is actually the way that people are working together. And so that is going to professionalize. That's going to have a whole new set of infrastructure on top of it. Like, one last point is that in the year 1000 AD, the year 1000 AD, the Catholic Church banned cousin marriage in France and Germany. And they did this because at the time, power resided in clans. And clans built power by having family members marry each other, so you keep the bloodline strong. And so that was just the source of power in the world. The Catholic Church says no more marrying your cousin. And so what happened was people began to be individuals for the first time. And when they did, cities began to grow for the first time. And the guild was invented, and the university was invented. And these modern structures of society were all happened within about 100 years of the prohibition of cousin marriage. Because people were individuals and they suddenly needed new structures in which to have meaning, find love, make a living. The internet has re-individualized us. We're no longer what we look like, where we're from. We can be whatever we want to be, however many people we want to be. And now in this new online society, we're making the new structures for safety, meaning, making money, all of that. That's going to be the next centuries of the world. Is shit that we're like A/B testing right now with our lives and with our experiences. But this is going to be the foundation. And we're just, we're a little piece of driftwood on top of this roiling ocean. I'm always an optimist. Like, I believe in us. I believe in people of the future. Like, I'm excited about where that will go. And
Yes.
dot.
That was amazing. That was totally fascinating, and I just feel like we had a little it was like a little holiday actually. I had a little holiday in Yancey's brain, and like a really nice place to be. It was much better than hanging out in my brain. What Kyle, what's a little holiday in your brain looking like at the moment? Do you feel this moment so excites me? I'm so glad I'm here in America to be at this time. What joy it is. What's going on in your brain to react?
I'm just waiting for America to re-legalize cousin marriage.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean,
Executive
I think
order, exactly.
No, I mean, I feel optimistic too. Like, I have never stopped having fun on the internet, since like the year 2000 or whatever. So I have no expectation that it will stop being fun anytime soon. And like, I think the lowered barrier to entry has just been amazing for so many people. And there's so many amazing newsletters and podcasts and just like people putting stuff out for the sheer joy of putting stuff out. And like, that makes me really excited. Like, it's fun for me that I work for the New Yorker. They're very tolerant and nice to me and letting me do these like random newsletters. And I really enjoy that because it gives me a creative outlet. It gives me a place to like riff and connect with different people and like try out these ideas. And I feel like that's what the internet and social media and like digital media now is good for, is we're all embroiled in this like collective conversation and we're all debating all these things, trying stuff out, moving on, moving back and forth. And out of that eventually comes something really cool. What I hope is that what I wanted to ask Yancey was like, can we ever trust the platforms again though? Like, Kickstarter is one of the only, it's not the only platform where I know I could trust my relationship to it. And there was a contract and a deal that worked out for everyone. But I feel like that did not happen with Instagram or TikTok or Patreon. I also have bad feelings about. Substack like has been really good, but there are ways in which it's also a confining platform. So I just don't know what structure supports people next.
Yeah, I don't think it's wise to trust. I think we could be transactional. I think thinking of ourselves as a customer is actually not a bad thing. And the most sort of user positive aspect of Substack is that it's built on top of the Blogger JSON open sharing process that was created by Ev Williams and some of the early people who developed in WordPress. So where Substack adopts the same export import functionality that every other website makes, so you can move. I'm a Ghost user. Most of the time, I will sometimes use Substack, but because I think products that allow true portability like that, and again, a website data, not a Squarespace, not a Wix, not a Shopify, but other types of things are portable. And I think that's ultimately what we have to demand. So rather than trust, we have to have demonstrable proof that we can take our things and we don't suffer costs. There's going to be some limits of that where it's like the whole system breaks down if you whatever. But that needs to be the bare minimum. That's something that my current project Meta Label, can and will satisfy. But things like that, then let us be like, yeah, you can do your thing. That's great. I'm just going to leave if you start to suck, and like, that's great. I root for that.
But you know what? I've got a question, Kyle. So going back to the sort of your whole thesis in Filter World about the flattening effect of the algorithm making it the same. So initially, as you say, Substack was the blogosphere with a newsletter function, but then they did Notes, which is the social media algorithm basically. And so and it was funny because I was talking to a colleague this morning saying, actually, she was like, when I started using Substack and it was just newsletters, it was great. She said, but then I joined the app and it just became a cacophony again. And she was like, and now I eat the whole thing. And so what is the equivalent? So what do you make of that? And B, go back to the hipster coffee shop, the subway tiles, the Scandinavian furniture. How are you seeing that manifest in real time on Substack? Talk me through that. What is the equivalent here?
Yeah. There's like a platform curse or something, or a feed curse that as soon as there is a huge platform, as soon as there is a centralized feed, things are going to start moving toward each other and people will start copying what everyone else is doing. And I think that happens on Substack the same as everywhere else. The space that doesn't happen so far is in your email inbox. That's where you can exert control and filter things how you want and get your newsletters. And so that part I like. And, newsletters can get to you through other providers. But I do think now there's a genre and trope and form of the Substacker, the same as similar to a blogger or an influencer, where you are building your identity and your writing and your production toward things that are more like everyone else and not. So yeah, I mean the equivalent of the not generic coffee shop is the little website that you make on your own and people have to type the URL into the browser. And it might be ugly or weird, but that's the only thing that's wholly under your control.
Well, that is still the that is still the highest legitimacy. Self-domain is still highest legitimacy. And there is a challenge. The challenge with platforms is they are enormously helpful at providing us a toolkit that allows us to execute at scale, which is tremendous. The challenge is that if they are too rigid or become too much about themselves, the platform overshadows the work. And, I've been one of the first Substack newsletters. I mean, been using Substack for a long time. As the volume of Substack newsletters has showed up in my inbox, two things have happened. Number one, I open far less newsletters than I used to. That is for sure. And ultimately, I kind of view all Substack's newsletters as, oh, that's a Substack. I don't think of it as that person anymore, because I'm used to the same format, the same, it looks the same, it feels the same. So it's a Substack. So to me, it has more of negated the individual voice, and it has made it more of a platform expression, which for me personally has made me take my work elsewhere. But this is this is not. I don't pass judgment on this. I observe it and say these are dynamics that happen, and they. But for me, it's changed my relationship to it.
Hmm. That's so. I mean, that's so. To go back to like that feels like the sort of the like one of the defining questions, Yancey, for like how do you remain creative? Like how do you resist this flattening, this the sort of algorithmic sameness? How can you like occupy spaces where? Because the amazing thing about Substack is, and why I've, for me, it's been a lifeline, right? I've been expelled from the mainstream media because The Guardian went and sold my news organization. And, and so Substack has been this sort of lifeline of like, I want to continue doing journalism. And this is at the, it's been, I was able to write about on behalf of my colleagues what was actually happening inside The Guardian and how we took collective action, and it had no impact in that it was a corporate decision to sell us. And so this amazing thing about the creator moment, Yancey, what you're talking about is that this people are enabled to be creative in that way. There are now these platforms which are enabling that. There's monetization. That's been the sort of game changer for the Substack thing and enabling like like we're seeing this flourishing now of independent journalism on here, independent media. But there's two things. It feels to me there's like well, there's lots of problems with that. But one is that our content going out on Substack, which evidence-based journalism, is side by people who are just literally writing the craziest conspiracy theories, and that looks the same. To go back to the flattening issue, that looks the same. And then the second issue is that this question about how talk about the fact that there's these kids, never been more kids who want to be creators, but actually a lot of it, what's actually constitutes a creator these days, a lot of it doesn't seem terribly creative. Some of it seems just very, I don't know, posy and derivative. Am I allowed to say that?
Oh, I've been. Fortunately, I'm not posy or derivative anymore. I have been every day on my life until today. Today's the first day I've stopped. I mean, that's just all of us at some point. I don't judge. We're all finding our voice. Um, I- it's a little bit is about how you're motivated. I think I am motivated by connecting to the deepest truths that I discover and following them and trying to express them and just seeing where they lead and truly trying to have an open mind about what they are meant to be. And often that results in me sending a newsletter. But there have been other moments where like instead of that, I'm like, I'm going to just send this idea in a private Google Doc to 5 different people who I'm thinking of and just talk to them about it. And I'm actually never going to publish the piece. And through that, actually, that's like all of my current projects started with that, not publishing and instead privately sharing with the actual human I was thinking about. But to me, the entire reason I do anything is to connect to the truth and the source and to reflect it. For someone else, the entire reason they to create is to remain visible and to make a living and to achieve certain extrinsic goals. And it's a little bit of a finite versus infinite game comparison. If you know the idea of certain types of games have endings that have winners and losers, but other types of games have no ending. And the entire point is just to keep playing. So I think of my creative practice as an infinite game where every day I get to try to think of something and explore is like a gift. And that is what I'm about. That's how Virgil Abloh talked about his work. No work is better than the opportunity to make the next one. But that is like, I'm 46 years old. Like, honestly, it's only in the last few years of my life have I been able to get to that point through learning to love myself, going through enough failures, going through enough things. Like, that is my process as an artist to have arrived at that point. And to me, that is clearly what it's about. And maybe in the past, I had moments of luckily glimpsing it, while stumbling. You're like falling on your face, and at the last second, you see a sight of like, oh, what was that? That's what our practices should be about. the challenge of the condition and the creative culture we find ourselves in. Of course, that is nowhere in part in the conversation. And culture and creativity is about status games, and it's about achieving certain things, and it creates a very different mentality to it that I do not identify with, but I understand why it's there. That I think is largely driven by platforms. I do think that's true. I do think elements of that will always be with us. But I think a lot of it's conditional to where we are now, just where we are right now.
Apparently, somebody sent me a message saying they think the feedback is coming from me. So apologies to
I think
anybody.
you have to mute. I think you have to mute when we're talking.
Is that what I do? I don't even know how I do that on here. I'm so
You
sorry.
tap it on your phone. In the top right corner is a little mic button.
In the top right, there's a little mic button. I got it. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Okay. Apologies, everybody. What can I say? We're on a journey together in this Substack live experience. I apologize to everybody for fucking that up, but like I'm told that it's we all participatory is the sort of code word now. So we're I feel if that's okay, guys, it's a learning experience. I'm sorry that I inflicted that learning on you guys. But I've forgotten what I was going to say now. Just Carl, I just wanted to come back with you. Oh yeah, so that question to you, Carl, and also Carl, I asked Yancey to solve the problem of culture for all time. What is the future? Could you please solve the problem of media for me for all time? Like, what is the answer to that, to journalism and media? Because it's I personally have been in the maelstrom, and so I'm really thinking about like what are the answers that we sort of need in this time? What would building back better feel like in the media space? Please give me your wisdom.
Okay, I tried to do the muting thing also, so maybe it'll be better now. I do hear less feedback actually, so we'll see. Yeah, okay, I do have an answer, I think, and like I don't know. There's this good quote about the media business that there's only two things that ever happen. There's aggregation and disaggregation. In other words, like things come together and things fall apart. And I think we've been in the midst of this like vast disaggregation. Everything has fallen apart. We're back to the level of like me talking to you directly, like one to one, whatever, or me charging you $5 a month so you can, have access to the runoff of my group chat or whatever. So I think we're at that dispersed point. Now we have to come back together a little bit. And like, I think to me, a great future of media is like take 5 to 10 creator types or like solo operators, put them into a small structure, give them a small executive team, mandate that the corporation only makes like a 5% profit margin. All the rest of the money goes back to the, collective of the media entity, and it doesn't sell and it doesn't aggregate more, and it just operates as that kind of like garage band zine, small scale operation. And I think that could take us really far, just in terms of like-minded people coming together to operate small things with a good profit margin that comes from digital media. Like the costs of publication are now so low. We don't have to print a magazine. We don't have to publish a newspaper. All we have to do is this. And thus, like, you can operate that way. Like, I've run small media companies like that, where it's 4 or 5 people. You barely break even, but you break even and you pay the salaries, and you can go on like that for a really long time. And so that's what I hope happens more in the near future.
That is very interesting because that's yes, that does. I agree with that. Although the only thing I'd say with that is that it's also nice if things look beautiful. What do you think about that? What about the fact that like having sort of amazing design and amazing photography, and rather than just this endless scroll on your phone, do you think there is an appetite for that?
Yeah, I'm doing the mute thanks for learning Substack. Yeah, but I do like there are beautiful newsletters. There are beautiful websites. I mean, good text is beautiful. I think there's like the aesthetic presentation is undervalued still. and Substack has removed a lot of that like customization. But yeah, I think you can make beautiful digital experiences too, and it just takes some more attention. And like, in addition to your 3 to 5 journalists, you need the one designer slash illustrator, one ad sales guy, and one manager. That'll be your whole stack.
But apart from maybe not even, I mean, ads aren't really working either. Yancey, can we just talk? So Yancey, I met in the flesh in the green room at TED in Vancouver 3 weeks ago. And Yancey gave an amazing TED talk, which isn't yet online, and in which he is literally inventing a new structure, cooperative structure for creatives to come together in a new type of corporate. Have I introed it correctly there? But I'd love you just to explain briefly, Yancey, what you're up to and what this could mean.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what Kyle was just describing, I think is going to happen and going to become even more empowered. But yeah, my main project these days is Meta Label, which is a platform for people to release work together. And since last year, we've been working on a side project that's taken on a life of its own to create a new structure for creative work. So I've come to see how some of the projects succeeding within Meta Label, like the Dark Forest Collective I'm a group a part of, we're making quite a lot of money together, but doing it in like an unincorporated form. So we are working with some amazing partners to make something called the Artist Corporation, or the A Corp. And to make an artist corporation real, we are working to pass laws and to make it a new legal type, like a C Corp, B Corp, LLC, S Corp. And an A Corp is a legal structure designed for creative work that has a creative purpose, that can receive both nonprofit and for-profit funding, can fractionalize into shares, has pass-through income for creators like an LLC or an S Corp, but that allows them to have a foundation to grow their practice into like a real capital growing enterprise, like bringing capitalism to creative people for the first time, and can give them access to things like healthcare and other services, and things that again people get by being in a trad job. But in the world right now, like creative people, we're 1099 NPCs. We're just like total non-entities, not wealth generators. We're just selling things out of our knapsack one at a time. There's no access to collective wealth of any type. And so we have to invent that new structure. And so that will be becoming public in a big way next month, and will be a political process and a multi-year process. And I think something that could provide a real foundation for a very different creative ecosystem. But we're working with amazing people on it. And yeah, it's a wild endeavor.
Kyle, do you want to just jump in there? And have you got a follow-up question to Yancey off the back of that? I know you're interested to hear what he had to say.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely sounds great. Like, I've experienced the absence of that kind of structure myself, and it creates huge problems. And like, something that's been on my mind through the 2010s even is just like the wealth generation that happens through startup equity and through corporations, and like through the sweat equity translated into real equity that you get by working with these things is totally unavailable to more cultural enterprises. And there's no reason why that should be necessarily. Like, it's been pretty
immature. It's been fairly immature until now. Like, to be an artist or a creative person is like a pretty rarefied thing until the last 15 years. Like, the profession of being a creator is about 15 years old. And so this really is a mass employment, mass practice for the first time. Again, first 25 years of the 21st century, it's creativity. It's creativity. And so I think of this as the creative century. This is like, last one was global powers, multinational corporations rearranging the world. This century is group chats and creatively minded people like optimizing, redesigning, reimagining the world. That's what it's about now. And the tools, there's so many crazy things. Like the concept of creativity was invented in the 1940s by United States Department of Defense grants, and to how to find officers for the military and how to make people happy under early capitalism. The word creativity entered the dictionary in 1966 for the first time. Like, this is a very modern thing, actually. And so we're just at this maturation inflection point that the internet has really made happen. But yeah, that's what I see when I look around.
But can I? And then I've got to let you go. This has gone on. I was like, we need quite punchy, and now here I am just going. But just one more question. Yancey, what about the fact that all these AI companies, and I was about to swear, but I didn't, are just stealing our data? They're taking our IP, they're training their large language models on it. There's no equity of syndication fees, anything in return. We did not consent, we didn't sign up to that. And there is allegedly recourse in law, but let's see where that gets. How do we defend ourselves?
Well, I have to shout out just that Liz Pelly joined to watch. No one does it better than Liz. What's up? Respect. What am I saying? What did you ask me? I got distracted by who? Oh, AI. Well, I mean, listen.
I called them data rapists, Yancey, which is
I know. I was there. Yeah.
They didn't. Some people in the audience didn't like that so much. But
I guess I will take. I truly don't know all of what to think about AI, of course, and I'm not going to try to pretend anything. But it seems like a project that's creating mass commodification. Mass commodification. A lot of things just become as simple as like input output, and so as that plays out across everything, what is still valuable and what does the world look like? And I think, honestly, I think creative people, individual voices, new ideas, I think those continue to be the rare qualities. Yes, machines can do that too, but I think ours are founded in a deeper truth, and at the very least will be, writing these scripts. And again, in a world where right now as creative people, we are always sitting at somebody else's table. It's never our seat. We're always the quivering, the quivering little twee being there waiting for a yes or no from some larger force. In a world where we have A corporations, in a world where we have our own structures and strategies, like maybe we have actual proper standing. Maybe we are using AI tools the way that we wish. Maybe we do have bargaining power with institutions because we have our own corporate power and structures. So like a little bit of there's the Ted Chiang thing about like, we don't fear AI, we just fear capitalism. I think there's a little bit of that in place of like, well, right now we are solely in a position of being a customer or like a victim to it or a supply source to it. But is there a way to have a deeper relationship or a different relationship? I don't know. But like I said, I don't know anything.
I love it. So this is so interesting, right? Because the whole thing, the really one of the real positives which came out of the Guardian, sacking basically more than 100 journalists, was the experience of going on strike, and that experience of that whole process and taking that collective action, and feeling like standing in that tradition, understanding that there's always been this fight for rights in that way. But I wonder, just Kyle, can you? I mean, and then I think we are going to have to go up. But what you write so much about AI? You've been writing amazing stuff in the New Yorker. Where do you feel like is AI coming for your lunch as a journalist for all of us?
Yeah.
Or actually, is it to Yancey's point that actually the sort of the human creative expression is never going to be that, right? And that's actually the boringness of AI might yet save us.
Yeah, I mean, I never fear for like human creativity. Like, we'll definitely always be doing cool stuff and making new cool things. But I worry for like the economic structures that undergird like vast amounts of media and information production. Like, we already saw how Google search took away a lot of revenue from media companies who weren't able to compete with it in terms of advertising and stuff like that. And now AI, like generative AI, is threatening Google search. like if Google search can't come up with its own next iteration, then someone else is going to outcompete it and basically do something that's more extractive from media. So I kind of think it's a little late for like this wave of AI to escape it, but I think the next era for me is like building structures that are completely outside of that ecosystem, that are not dependent on massive tech platforms, that are maybe not dependent on technology at all, short of distribution. In other words, like selling the thing out of your knapsack again. Like in a way, in a certain runaway AI worlds, like in 10 or 20 years, I'm like off on a Greek island trying to grow grapes and make wine and just like live out my life apart from these systems, because I just don't know that they're going to benefit people that much. So yeah, I'm in that way, like I'm either not optimistic about AI or I don't care enough to participate in it. Yeah, I hope it almost drives a desire for the opposite, for the small gesture, the one-to-one human interaction. And that can take place through technology or with the benefit of AI tools. But like right now, I'd rather be selling stuff out of my knapsack and like handing something from me to you than going through any kind of mediation. And like AI is kind of the ultimate mediation, right? Like it digested the entire hash of our civilization and our writing and our visual art and our films into this mess, and we're just kind of automated pulling things out of it at this point.
I don't know about anyway. I have to say, on a personal level, it's Friday evening here. This has been very refreshing. I feel like it was the palate cleanser I needed at the end of this week, which is going to send me into the weekend. It has been such a privilege talking to you both. I would love you both to come back in some form or whatever. We're thinking of doing some sort of like reading club. And I was saying actually we should have sent round some sort of like key text from you before we had the conversation, because I think that would sort of be, and then taking Q&A from people here. Maybe that's something we can still try and do. And because to Yancey, to your kind of analogy, it would be really great almost to think of this as a dark forest space where actually we can have these conversations in where we can have real conversations about what the problems are, at least. And I think the thing which has really put me off doing these Substack lives, doing YouTube, all the rest of it, is that sort of performative angle of it, where I don't know, it's like the being on display, the public nature of it. Whereas I really like this idea of reclaiming this as that sort of enclosed, safe space where we can actually talk about real problems and think about solutions and experiments around that. And so thank you both for coming. I'll send out the links to your essay on that, Yancey, and to actually, Carl, you can maybe send me a link of what you'd most like me to send out to everybody. It'd be really interesting, of whether, or even your little reading list for both of you. If there's anything, actually, maybe that's the idea. There's something particularly that you think it would be of value, which people, would be good for them to read over this weekend after this conversation. That would be great. And to everybody who came, thank you so much. I'm so sorry for my total incompetence with the mute button, but at least now I have learnt that lesson. So there we go. Bye bye.
Thank you. It was fun.